Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the EmeraldPlanet and EmeraldPlanet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what EmeraldPlanet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the EmeraldPlanet. Hello, welcome to the EmeraldPlanet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us. EmeraldPlanet is looking around the globe, as always, looking for those leading technologies. And actually, as the worsening of climate change and the increased disastrous impacts of climate change on humankind, on all living beings, we're now trying to look at or across the horizon. And this company that we're introducing right now, Pangea, is one of those that actually is doing the very same thing and is introducing a very innovative technology in densely built communities, such as downtown areas, the 300 legacy cities in the United States, and also in very rural areas where they have these massive data centers. So we have Dan Bicz. He is the co-founder of Pangea Filtration Technology, LLC. And Dan, welcome to the EmeraldPlanet TV.
Thank you, Dr. Sam.
It's always good to have you with us. Tell us, what is Pangea? And you really claim to be the clean of everything. How do you get to do that?
Well, by bringing together the cleanest of clean people and who know technology and who have a track record. And in this case, we've united about 18 people that could all retire early if they want, but they're dedicating themselves to helping clean the planet. And so Pangea principal mission is to help deploy proven climate technology that can help countries meet the COP26 and companies meet various mandates, such as those being put down by the data center industries.
Now, looking at Pangea itself, and we're going to leave this logo up here for just a minute. I like it because it really gives the essence of your mission and your vision. But looking at going beyond the horizon, how do you find such innovative technologies, but yet are proven? You're introducing a technology here that's been around for almost 2 decades. It's spread across the United States, yet it's something that even people that are in the environmental community have really never heard of.
Well, Dr. Sam, we actually got solicited through our network to take a look at almost 24 technologies. And we were careful to select 5 that could be vertically integrated and mass deployed, whose time is ready. And that certainly is the case with Flozone, who's done a very nice job over the last 18 years, but whose time is really come due to mandates like those in Washington, D.C., in data centers and in communities, seeking to lower drought conditions.
Now, looking at this intersect of economics, environment, and health, we understand many people are all about the economics. Can we pay for it? Can we afford it? Others with the environment do it no matter what the cost. And of course, everyone is concerned about health, and more so as the worsening of climate change. So how do you balance economics, environment, and health through Pangea to bring something that really is going to have direct impact on the health of everyone around it?
Well, Sam, we call this the triple green bottom line, where we're looking to facilitate cooling the planet through a program that is not only good for the environment and helps people's health, but it's good for the bottom line. And for example, in the case of Flozone, it will actually pay for itself in anywhere from 18 to 42 months. So in this case, our philosophy is what we call pollution to profit, or P2P, so that it makes economic sense to obliterate what's bad for the environment.
I think that's really something that more people need to think about. And when you see these scenes here, and the plumes of smoke coming up, some of this are carcinogens, some of them are greenhouse gas emissions, of course, some of it's steam. But how do we need to move forward in the 21st century? Because we're going to have about 9 billion people on the planet by 2038, by the latest estimates. How do we start eliminating now? And actually, we should have been done yesterday, to make sure that we don't have these scenes, but yet we're not harming the economic viability of the United States and other countries around the globe.
Technology can do wonderful things. And as we move faster and faster to adopt technology, which is oftentimes stymied by the status quo that creates an absolute inertia. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And, fortunately in the United States, scenes like these have become less and less, but offshore, this is very, very common. South Africa, India, and which both of those places are starting to make a commitment to reduce not just carbon, but sulfur, and that's what kills. Mm-hmm. So they are also interested in the Flozone for what it does to improve the environment, because, in the case of cooling towers, you may not see the emissions, but as you know, Dr. Sam, there's such a thing that's been reported as chemical clouds that come from the chemicals that are required to mitigate the disease that comes from cooling towers. So right. Emissions, as you know, is a tough thing. The United States has done much better over the decades. Still should do more, especially when it comes to carbon.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, and you're looking at very ugly picture here as far as what's going on as far as emissions into the air and all of that. But going to the Internet of Things, this is the way that we can actually test and prove technologies before they're actually even deployed. And even though your Flozone has been around, say, 2 decades, there's still constant improvements are going on, and we're much more sophisticated in being able to test. Why is it important to continually test and improve technologies, even if they have been employed for a number of decades?
Well, Dr. Sam, it's important to note that the Flozone system actually is an IoT in that it has 24/7 monitoring. So in addition to improving operations, it actually monitors and allows you to anticipate whenever there's a pending situation. And again, this is where we're moving more and more into automation. And all of our technology, we not only require them to be, proven with a track record, but also that they are 24/7 monitoring.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that's very important. Now, world bodies are very interested in these most innovative and leading edge technologies. So how do the international bodies actually help to drive this, even though America is, and some people would disagree with this, but really is a leader in many areas of the environment. But how do international bodies help to drive this so that we really are meeting the mandates coming out through the United Nations, and we're progressing to lower emissions, but also global warming at the same time?
Sam, it almost seems like you prodded this. You probably don't. I know you don't know this, but just in the last couple of weeks, the World Bank, some folks at the World Bank actually engaged at Pangea unsolicited and has been introducing us to folks mainly in India, so that we could help them with their climate crisis. And so we also see the World Bank starting to put pressure on on different countries that are emitting massive amounts of SO2 in particular. Mm-hmm. So it's I think the international community, the big organizations such as the World Bank, are really dedicated towards the mission of first the Paris Accord, and now more accelerated by COP26. So that's where leadership has to come, because let's look at Flozone. One of the reasons that has been relatively unknown is that there's been no mandate. You need the mandates, and then you need the right institutions to mandate them. And in DC, they've now mandated building efficiency. That's right. What opens the door. And the data centers, independent of any government push, they're mandating lower energy, lower water. That opens the door for. So mandates drive it, and that's what counts.
Yeah, and looking at the leadership in energy and environment LEED, and of course LEED Platinum is the standard now in Washington, D.C. itself, and becoming more so around the globe. Why is LEED so important?
Well, I will say that Flozone uniquely stands out because it can actually help buildings and communities meet up to 13 LEED standards, everything from sustainability to water efficiency, energy, the atmosphere. And so, and LEED in many ways acts as much of an incentive as it does a mandate or objective. And so it's a very important tool. And that's why, as you point out, Washington, D.C. is the only in the world that is a LEED Platinum. They're fully embracing the LEED program, as are more and more building owners.
Yeah. And the whole thing about it with the LEED, it really does set an international benchmark, and that's very important. We're getting low on time here, Dan, so we're going to move through here. But these buildings, why is it so important as far as eliminating these chemical clouds that are being emitted? And so, it's always been, that people on the edge are the ones that are suffering the most. But actually, what you found out, probably about 2,000 different buildings in the core of the living and the business districts are actually being covered by these chemical clouds.
Well, Dr. Sam, these buildings are cooled by devices called cooling towers. And cooling towers back about 50 years ago were determined to be a cause of Legionella disease, because bacteria and other bad things would accumulate. And so people, so it became common to use chemicals in sometimes large doses to mitigate those conditions. And as you can appreciate, the chemicals can dissipate into the atmosphere. And there's been some articles published in Washington, D.C. about these so-called chemical clouds. But it's not just what goes into the air. It could also get into the water system through the flushing process that gets into the sewer system.
Yeah, so, and also the land. Dan, we're going to leave on this. What do you see for Pangea over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And you have to be quick. We're out of time.
Dr. Sam, we look to be a global presence in lowering carbon and emissions and costs.
And also chemical clouds. Thank you, Dan Bicz, co-founder, Pangea Filtration Technology, as we create the Emerald Planet. As EmeraldPlanet looks around the globe, we're looking beyond the horizon because, as we know, climate change is becoming more pronounced, more dangerous, and more destructive than every place on planet Earth. And so we have to be much more aggressive and much more proactive as the technologies that are being introduced. And we have one called Flozone, and it's Flozone Services Inc., represented by Tony Engle. He is the director of technology that actually has been around for 2 decades. It's being deployed across the United States, not widely known, but yet seems to be making profound changes not only in really urban built areas, but also in rural communities as well, where they have these massive data centers. So, Tony, welcome to the EmeraldPlanet TV.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about Flozone, and then we're going to go right into the technology itself. But give us a little history of Flozone, and then we'll progress to the technology and why it is so important.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so Flowzone, as you said, started roughly 20 years ago. We decided that we wanted to be more of a technology-based company versus the industry standards of chemicals. But we also wanted to look at the building as a whole as it relates to HVAC. So we developed a number of products for cooling tower, for closed loops, and for indoor air quality, and had it tested throughout part of the country and have quite a wide distribution. And we've even had been featured with the Federal Energy Management Program. They did some research on us and actually listed us as a top 10 best practice.
That's absolutely fantastic. And looking at this deployment across the United States for a company that's really has been flying literally below the radar, this is a wide deployment. So why is it across the entire United States? That's actually question number one. Question number two, how has that really allowed you to test and enhance the technology by having such a broad-based deployment in different climatic zones?
Yeah, so the country itself has multiple water sources that it pulls from. So testing the technology across the entire country was key to proving out that the technology can be viable everywhere. So, looking at it in California, Nevada, Texas, Florida, those places, we were able to demonstrate that the technology can replace chemicals and be viable for the future.
Now, looking at this machine, it looks very simple, yet it's very profound in what it can do. Tell us how this operates. And you've mentioned several times no chemicals. Why is that so
Yeah.
critically important as we move through the 21st century? We're over 80% urban areas now and becoming more urbanized as a planet. So eliminating chemicals, what are some of the multiple steps of why that's so important?
Well, chemicals themselves have had issues throughout history. There's been movies about them. There's been multiple movies with multiple movie A-list characters doing it. People may remember Aaron Brockovich. That movie was actually about chromates, which was coming from the cooling towers. So there's been a quiet push in the industry to find other ways to treat these cooling towers without chemicals, but largely have been unsuccessful. That's why we were so pushing so hard to do a nationwide look at can this work throughout the country, and in doing so, we developed three different technologies to do so. The first one is a patented technology. It's a QED. It's an RF frequency that replaces the scale chemicals in the cooling tower. So it eliminates or keeps chemicals, keeps the scale in check. And then we use ozone, which has been in the industry for a while, but we use that to eliminate the biocides and keep biologics in check. And then we came up with our own 24/7 monitoring system to kind of wrap it all together, because you have to have a way to um, monitor these systems to make sure that they're operating efficiently, not only for us, but for the customer.
Yeah, and that's something that's very important. And I wanted to get to this diagram here. Walk us through what we're actually seeing, Tony. And why do you got the, and you use the acronym HVAC, so that's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Why are HVAC systems so critically important as we're moving through the 21st century? And what does this diagram actually mean to people that are living, working, and recreating in these high level buildings?
Yeah, so what people may not understand is that buildings operate on a similar scale as what your home might. So you have an HVAC at your home that allows for you to stay hot, cold, whatever that you may need. When you're looking at a building, it has similar needs. It has to remove heat, it has to put cold in there to keep people comfortable, and it does so through much larger systems than what people may understand. And so cooling towers were developed in order to do that. That's the system on the left there of the screen with the chiller. And so there's piping that goes through that, and you have to be able to keep those systems clean in order to make them efficient. So you want to keep the minerals in check, you want to keep the biologics in check, but it goes further than that. And what we call it is out of sight, out of mind. There are actual like arteries of the building. Those are the smaller pipes that you see in the frame there, and those are the closed loops, and those are typically out of sight, out of mind. So we developed some technologies that would actually help keep those clean so that it could increase the efficiencies of the building. And then we took it a step further and we looked at, okay, if we can keep the arteries clean and whatnot, but we need to also keep the air itself cleaner. And that has never been more prevalent than now with the advent of COVID and people finally understanding that indoor air quality really matters. So we developed some technology with Zone Air that can help mitigate a lot of that. And then we wrapped it all together with our E3 Sentinel monitoring program so that we can actually monitor and maintain these systems efficiently.
Now, looking at this building, I want to go to these chemical clouds. This is something that people probably have never heard of. I guess intuitively we could suspect that this is going on around us, but we can't see it. So we don't know about it. So the chemical clouds, what are chemical clouds and why are they so hazardous, not only to human health, but also to all the biologics and the animals that come in contact with these buildings, either living in it or living around them?
Yeah, so a chemical plume is what happens off of the top of these cooling towers. And I'm sure people have seen it and they just didn't know what they were seeing at the time. But you'll see on the top of these buildings what looks to be a mist of some sort that is coming off the top of them. And most people don't realize that that's actually the cooling tower itself. And it is evaporating water off out of the system in order to cool the water down in order to bring more heat out of the building. But when it evaporates that water, more than just water enters the atmosphere. You can have minerals enter the atmosphere on a limited basis, but more importantly, you would have bacteria enter the atmosphere from these cooling towers, and that kind of came to a head several years back with California and New York. New York got a little more heat out of it with the Legionella that hit the New York City, and that all came from cooling towers. So what we wanted to do was highlight that you can um, eliminate these chemicals and still mitigate the issues that are caused by these cooling towers and these plumes that can come out.
Yeah, and actually, I think what you've done, not just mitigate, but actually you're going one better and actually improving the air quality. It's coming out of the buildings sometimes more than what actually is being drawn in to the building. But you're talking about Legionella, is properly known in the media as Legionnaire's disease, and I think
Yeah.
everyone will know it by its name. But looking at this is your own facility. But how is this an example of the mass and the scale of buildings that we have all over the United States, all over the globe, actually? And we need to be, as humans and caretakers of all other living beings, how do we need to really be concerned about buildings of this size and scale to make sure that they're not doing damage to the communities, animal, human, and biologics at the same time?
Well, buildings on these scales carry a large footprint, more so in how they could potentially damage things than they do in actual what people think of as a square footage footprint. Buildings of these size will consume massive amounts of water, energy, their output of carbon dioxide and chemical output is significant, and it needs to be monitored on a regular basis. They have the larger you get, especially in manufacturing, there are different rules that applies to these companies, mainly brought on by the EPA and state level things. So they're always looking for ways to reduce their footprint, or at least the environmentally friendly companies are. So they're looking for ways to reduce their water consumption, reduce their energy consumption, and so forth. And we're hoping that we can help them do that.
Well, not hope, you're actually doing it. So let's go from that. But this whole emphasis, and we're running out of time, Tony, no chemicals. Why is it critically important? Let's be quick because there's a couple of the slides that I want to put up before we finish.
Yeah, so no chemicals is important because chemicals are actually damaging the environment, more so in the fact that the chemicals is what's caused these superbugs that we keep running into. The bugs themselves will actually mutate, and you'll come up with resistant strains like MRSA. That's methicillin resistant. And what that means is it has converted itself so that certain chemicals don't affect it. So by using technology similar to ozone or even ozone itself, biologics can't become immune to those, and so that it is an instant kill. So we run a less risk of creating issues in the future by using technologies versus chemicals.
Okay, fantastic. And we're going to go out on this. Why is every drop, but every non-use kilowatt, every non-release of chemical clouds, and every non-use of the land to landfill the biologics out of this so important? And we have 30 seconds for that.
We have a finite amount of resources on this planet, and water is one of the most important ones. We have people look at this earth and they see all the water everywhere, but they don't understand that that's not usable, at least currently not usable with the technology we have today. So we have to find ways to limit the amount of resources we take out of the environment, water and energy included. So that's been our push. Is our technology allows for customers to reduce their impact on the environment.
Yeah. And we're going to go out on this. Thank you very much, Tony. What do you see for the long-term development of Flozone over the next 5, 10, or 15 years? You got 15 seconds.
We see Flozone as a disruptive technology, and we envision it to take a major foothold within the HVAC industry. And with the help of companies like Pangea, we're hoping to make an impact globally.
That's fantastic. Thank you for being with us, Tony Engle, as we create the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.
Talking about the Internet of Things, where it's everywhere around us, ubiquitous, and it's every part of society. As we move through the 21st century, we're going to be doing the same thing as far as taking care of planet Earth and making sure that we're actually cleaning things and improving the environment instead of degrading the environment. And we have a company that's going to be with us, Pangea. They're introducing a technology. It's been around over 2 decades, proven across the United States, but very few people have heard of it, called Flozone. And we have Mickey Walsh. Mickey Walsh is the co-founder and chief operations officer of the Pangea Filtration Technology LLC. And Mickey, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you, Dr. Hancock, for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. We're talking about the Internet of Things that's absolutely everywhere around us, but you're trying through Pangea to make sure that we're actually addressing the environment where we're constantly cleaning things, reducing the amount of water, the energy, release of greenhouse gases and these chemical clouds. How do you think you're going to achieve that, just like the Internet of Things?
Well, I mean, there's a number of different measures that have been taken nationally, internationally on water conservation issues and energy conservation issues, carbon capturing, et cetera. And the great thing about the Flozone technology is it directly addresses each one of those items through one of the nation's largest water users, which is cooling towers. And so by addressing one of the largest uses of cooling towers, of course, next to irrigation systems for agriculture, cooling towers are the next largest user of water. And so by addressing that large user of water, we hope that we can reduce the water consumption and save a little bit of energy. And hopefully you've got a technology that will pay for itself, which will make it very attractive to commercial interests.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing. We're looking here again about this connectivity as far as the Internet of Things. But really, this is an overlay as far as what you're doing with Pangea. Taking this image that we have here, Mickey, how does Pangea mimic what we're looking at and we're actually achieving through the Internet of Things, but doing it so that we're reducing the use of energy, the use of water, greenhouse gas emissions, these chemical clouds, and we're actually cleansing the environment, making cleaner out there instead of worse.
Well, I mean, the great thing about AI and the dawn of and the introduction of artificial intelligence utilizing the Internet of Things, you have many, many different components that are drawn together within a central operating system, such as a building management system. And all of the technologies that Pangea Filtration has all tie into those building management systems, and they're all interrelated. And so when they're working together, they have a much more synergistic effect than working independently. So it's a 1-2 punch. If you're looking for water conservation, energy conservation, if you're operating optimally all the time in direct association with the conditions as they exist. I mean, after all, in nature, the weather doesn't stay the same all the time, does it? So consequently, if the weather doesn't stay the same, neither does the conditions that the building has to respond to stay the same. Yeah. So automation of that is extremely important. And especially when you're putting off a whole lot of steam and gas and everything else, you're trying to get a good control of that and make sure that it's doing it in a way that will benefit everything.
I think you bring up a really good point. Most people look at their buildings as being static in many different ways, and that's because you're there, the air's coming in, whether it's clean, dirty, or otherwise, the water the same way. Well, we think they're more static, and everything is absolutely stable. What you're saying is, Mickey, is that there's ebbs and flow throughout these buildings, and you're talked about the cooling towers, but also these huge data processing centers, and really everything around us is a living organization and living organism. So really everything is changing on a minute by minute basis. So looking at the 24/7, 365 monitoring, why is that even more critical now as we are moving towards 2038 and 9 billion people on planet Earth?
Well, in the 40 years that I've done industrial water management, I can tell you that the one thing that people always lacked was ability to control their system. And as technology has gotten better, I mean, even, I can remember 15 years ago, we were introducing solid state control systems into hospitals and other commercial buildings. And without that level of control, you either have to have somebody that sits in the system and watches it and tests it all the time, or you have to put a very robust automation system on it. Traditionally, those were very expensive, but automation systems have come down in price greatly. And that allows us to be able to get those levels of control that we want instantaneously. But then with the instantaneous control of the system, it also helps to have instantaneous reporting. So that way an operator or a manager can take a look at a system. Not only can he see the condition the system's operating in right now, but he can see real time, like you do on your car today. You can see what your gas mileage is on your car while you're driving. So you can change your driving habits to increase your fuel economy. And the same thing is true in buildings. If you have an ability to have good control and you can see what's going on in real time, you have the ability to make changes to adjust it so it operates more efficiently.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Now, looking at the Flozone, we did show this and talked about this a little bit earlier, but how does this do all of these things, Mickey, that you were talking about as far as reducing the cost, increasing the efficiency, but also lengthening the lifespan of all the technologies, but also the building themselves? So how does Flozone and its very innovative technologies really expand the life cycle of not only the building itself, but actually the humans and all living beings that are around and in these buildings?
Well, I think for me, the great thing about Flozone is that they've taken a new technology and integrated it with traditional approaches to water management and water treatment. And this combination is essential to successful treatment program, especially when dealing with new technologies. And introducing those new technologies and understanding them has been part of what I've done for a number of years. I can say this: the cooling tower, the IMS system in the Flozone package has ozone and radio frequency control for the cooling tower water, which takes care of scale, bacteria, corrosion, and water conservation in a cooling tower. The PFS system takes care of filtration on the closed loop. Oftentimes, a very disregarded piece of equipment within a central plant is the closed loop system. And oftentimes, it's also one of the most areas of the greatest efficiency recovery for energy, because that's where heat transfer occurs from the building to the refrigeration equipment. And the last piece is that they have a technology that they use on the air handling units that allows, it's a UV technology that allows for varying wavelengths of UV to keep the coils clean and to sterilize or disinfect the air as it comes into the building or as it's reused. So all of those pieces tie in together through a system they call eSentinel, and that eSentinel piece provides the reporting back to the building owner or manager.
Now, looking at this, and I'm going to leave this map up here, but I want to go back to the piece of equipment right now. So actually what you're just telling us, Mickey, is that actually you're drawing in air from the outside, which actually may be much dirtier and more harmful to the beings inside than what you're actually then going to exhaust out into the environment. Is that a good summary of what you just told us?
Well, I mean, there are filtration systems to remove a number of different contaminants from outside air. The Flozone system, they call it zone air, is on there to eliminate the biological component associated with incoming air. And that biological component, when it gets in contact with wet coils, has an opportunity to grow. And so by keeping that down, you create a healthier environment on the inside of the building. So in answer to your question, is the air going out of the building cleaner than the air coming into the building? Absolutely.
Okay, and that's what we wanted to know. Looking at this map going across the United States, we're looking at different states, very different climatic zones, and very different impacts from the surrounding environment. Because it's wetter, it's drier, higher humidity, lower humidity, many different variables. How do you have a piece of equipment like this that handles all of the variables that we're seeing across the entire United States?
Well, as we were talking about earlier, control is the key component to any dynamic system, such as goes on a cooling tower or an HVAC system is very important, especially in data center management as well. But as you move through the various zones of cooling within that map that you see there, wet bulb temperatures and everything else play a vital role in how do you select the proper equipment and how you control the system. And equal to that, the water, the condition of the water coming into those systems is vitally important as well. So it's especially desirable to understand a lot of the chemistry that's in the water so that we make sure that we get the best corrosion rates that we can get, the best biological control, and good water conservation.
Now, DCSEU, this is bringing Flozone into Washington, D.C. One, why is it so important to bring Flozone into what is already recognized globally as the world's first lead platinum city? And then DCSEU, how does it play a role of actually advancing beyond just the platinum designation, but actually enhance the platinum designation for Washington, D.C.? And we have about 30 seconds to answer that question.
Well, I think that, I mean, of course, it's a longer answer, but the nice thing about DCSEU, envisioned by the city and promoted by the city as a way to bring new technologies into a building without having a huge capital cost outlay, and getting that technology working immediately, providing those savings back right away, where otherwise they might not have been able to afford it. So, very applaud their efforts.
Yeah, and DC is District of Columbia Sustainable Energy Utility, and a very excellent organization, has been on EmeraldPlanet TV. And this is going to this 24/7, 365 monitoring that you were talking about, Mickey. We're going to go out on this. How is this really becoming the standard of the industry? And we, again, about 30 seconds to answer this. As far as monitoring all these huge complex systems in densely built urban areas as well as very rural areas.
Of course, with these monitoring systems, you have a central point that all the data comes into from a variety of these sources. And the way that the operators of these systems they have algorithms built in that trigger certain high points, low points, alarm systems, etc., and they prioritize them. So the minute they see something wrong, they can either make a change or alert an operator to the upset condition. And that's where it's really vital.
Fantastic. Mickey Walsh, thank you very much as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet. As we're looking across the globe as far as climate change is concerned, we're always looking for ways that we're going to reduce cost, water, energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and also something that we're really just finding out about. It's called chemical clouds or chemical plumes. And so we're going to be addressing all of this through this technology. And we have Cheree Warrick. She is the managing partner in the Profit Partner, and she's also a member of the Retired Military Officers Business Association. And Cheree, it's good to have you on the EmeraldPlanet TV.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Now, tell us a little bit about Pangea. We've been hearing about that. It's a very innovative and forward-looking company, looking beyond the horizon as far as technologies. But tell us a little bit about the Retired Military Officers organization and its business association.
Sure. So, about 20 years ago, there was a group of retired military officers that got together, and they decided to start meeting on a monthly basis in order to discuss business from that point of view. And since that time, it has grown into a thriving organization of individuals who come together in order to share resources, business information. Sometimes we team together in order to pursue different types of contracts on the government, federal level, as well as state levels. And overall, it's just great camaraderie as well that we're able to have.
And I'm going to read this. I just love this motto that you have: heroes in service, heroes in business, heroes in life. And I think that's something we need to realize about the military. These are day-to-day heroes that are living among us, millions actually. And our society really depends on the returning service members, retired military officers, anyone from the 5 branches of the services. And we need to honor each and every one of them, and you, Cheree, on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for being with us. Now, looking at the whole thing about the Pangea and Flozone, and then what you're doing through Ramoa, it's about profit, but also it's about protecting the environment while earning profit. Why do these two things fit together so nicely?
Well, in my opinion, the way that we leave our planet is affecting and going to affect our future kids, grandkids, great grandkids, etc. And it's important for us, since we know the science and we have the technology, to be able to bring the two together in order to help future generations. And the fact that Pangea is able to do that while also being a profitable business and helping these data centers and these other types of businesses be profitable as well, I think it's a win-win-win for all of us that are involved.
Mhm. It's very important. And of course, with the Internet of Things, the IoT, it's more easy to do that. My understanding is the various technologies that Pangea is identifying again is that protecting the environment and making profits, which fits right into Ramoa's mission of returning service members, retired military. The Internet of Things actually has changed the dynamic as how we can address severe climate change. How do
Mhm.
you see that yourself, Cheree?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things within Pangea and the technology we work with in IoT is that there are proprietary systems that can help, provide this remote monitoring and these live readings so that corporations can, have equipment that basically tells you where you are with regards to your settings and where you want to be and adjust accordingly. And there was a time when you had to have a person on the ground making sure that all of that was happening and functioning properly. But now we're able to set it up where it could be handled remotely and it can all be synergistic throughout the various clients that we have.
Mhm. And the whole thing about this, Cheree, and you and I have chatted, Ramoa, and I have great respect for your organization, and thank you
Mhm.
for inviting me to attend these meetings. Uh, you can have people halfway around the globe or all the way around the globe monitoring these systems. Why
Mhm.
is it important in today's world that we really do have 24/7, 365, and 366, of course, in leap year, to monitor what is really going on in these very complex buildings and very complex equipment?
Well, because even though we as humans need to stop sometime, the equipment doesn't stop. The world doesn't stop. Even, Christmas, New Year's, things like that, people are still using data. In fact, a lot of data is being used. So, because of that, we need to make sure that as the equipment is continuously being used, that somebody is monitoring it. And again, the system is able to alert us if there is an issue that's happening.
Mhm. And really, what's happening, and we're looking at these screens are right in front of us on this slide, is
Mhm.
each one of these little pieces, even though there's trillions of these across the globe, each one of these little pieces becomes the center of the universe. And I think that's something that's really important for us humans to think about, and we have the systems to do it.
Right.
Looking at the systems, and you got outage. How do we avoid the outage so we keep the systems moving again on a 24/7, 365 basis?
Well, as you had said before, the Flozone itself, which is a system that Pangea has, we actually have a proprietary E3 system, which which does the remote monitoring. So because of that, you are alerted in advance so that you don't have outages. You also have maintenance that happens all the time. And it's, a great partnership between the companies that are using this technology and, and our company.
Mhm, mhm. Now, looking at the data centers, and we're looking at the number of sites here, which is a huge number, and
Mhm.
people have no earthly idea how many data centers are across the United States and around the globe. And when you look at it, available, sold, and under contract, we realize how critical these facilities are to running our modern society. So again, monitoring this 24/7, 365, why is it so critical? And these red and gold sites that everything is being monitored all the time.
Well, the interesting thing is this cluster is Loudoun County, which is in Northern Virginia. And most people don't know that Northern Virginia has some of the largest square footage of data centers in the United States. So it's kind of like a hub. And because of that, and you probably have noticed this within the infrastructure bill, there's a lot of cybersecurity money that's going in order to protect our infrastructure and things like that. So, it's important for us to be able to, from an offensive point of view, be able to make sure that these systems are up and running, and then from a defensive point of view, to make sure that they are protected systems. So, yeah, and there's millions of square foot of data centers just in the United States. Not even thinking about the globe.
Yeah, and just think about what's in Northern Virginia. It just boggles the mind.
Hmm.
But looking at this as far as the various levels of use and the value with the data centers, and also these huge cooling towers that go into those data centers and large scale buildings in the built environment. But also, we need to protect the very rural areas where more and more of these data centers are going in, as far as what's called a greenfield development.
That's
So, not just the numbers we have here, Cheree, but what is this really indicating as far as where society is going, as far as its dependency on technology?
Well, I think that last year with the pandemic proved that remote work is going to increase, that people are going to move and are actively moving from inner city hubs like New York and Los Angeles into the Midwest, into Texas, Nashville, places like that. So as we become more dispersed as people, then technology and the way we use technology and where we use it is going to change as well. And I think that's one of the great things about Flozone, about data centers of the future, is that they're adapting as we're adapting as a people.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is really a stylized view of everything that's around us. I mean, we as human beings, we see the beautiful sky, we hear the birds, we see the
Mhm.
green grass, but yet everything around us is full of data, the
Yes.
Internet of Things. So, do we really need to be concerned about that, or do we just go about our day to day business knowing that there are people just like you, Cheree, that are taking care of us, even though we can't even see it?
Yeah. I think that as business people, we all need to be aware at some level, just like you're aware of your taxes for your corporation at some level, right?
Mhm.
However, there are great scientists that are always not just inventing things like Flowzone, but inventing other types of technology to help with this problem as well. There are people who are engineers that are helping to place those powerful systems
Mhm.
into not only data centers but all sorts of other locations as well. And that enables us to rest assured that there are people that are solving these issues over here, so that we're aware of that it's happening, so we can be appreciative of it, in my opinion. Be appreciative of it, but we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and we see these high-rise office buildings. Virtually all of these have cooling towers, so
Mhm.
they're having these chemical clouds coming out of there. And so having your 24/7, 365 monitoring of all of that, as well as water and carbon releases,
Mhm.
the use as far as the energy is concerned, all of these things are being monitored. We're running out of time, and we got about 30 seconds. What do you see as far as the Internet of Things, the IoT, and where we're going in the future, and how do you see world being shaped? And we got about 30 seconds to do that.
Well, I think that there are various types of technologies, Internet of Things, blockchain, cybersecurity, that's ever evolving. And I think that, again, offensive and defensive postures are needed to be taken in order to keep technology and data safe within the United States. So, and internationally. So, I think that's where it's headed.
Fantastic. This is Cheree Warrick. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Thank you so much.